Welcome, you're watching Vox News, your daily evening news with Rita Kamkumo. Our headlines today: South Africa's Defense Minister MapisaNqakula will lose 3 months of salary for allowing an ANC delegation to fly to Zimbabwe on a state jet. Nigeria's labor unions call off their mass protest over fuel and electricity rising prices planned for this Monday. The United Nations envoy for West Africa urges a peaceful and inclusive presidential election in Ivory Coast next month. Our top story today: South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa on Sunday decided to sanction Defense Minister Nosiviwe MapisaNqakula after she allowed some ruling party officials to travel with her to Zimbabwe on board an Air Force plane earlier this month. President Ramaphosa decided to dock MapisaNqakula's pay for 3 months from the 1st of November, after the opposition and civil society had denounced a misuse of state resources for party political business. Her salary will be paid to the fund established to help fight coronavirus. The minister, however, stated that she gave the ANC envoys a lift because she was flying to Zimbabwe for an official business trip. President Ramaphosa, who has pledged to fight corruption in his country, said the minister had not acted in the best interest of good governance. The opposition is, however, calling for her immediate resignation. In Nigeria, labor unions have called off their nationwide strike that was due to start this Monday morning. The planned strike was in response to the recent rise of fuel and electricity prices and the high cost of living in the country. However, Labour Minister Festus Keyamo announced this Monday morning the cancellation of the strike actions following an overnight agreement reached between the government and the unions. The minister said the deregulation of petrol pump prices will remain in force, but that the government will establish a financial support package for workers. He added that electricity tariffs will be suspended for 2 weeks, allowing a committee composed of government officials and labor union members to examine the justification for the electricity tariff policy over this period. In Ivory Coast, the United Nations Special Envoy for West Africa, Mohamed Ibn Chambas, on Sunday called for peaceful and inclusive elections as political tensions remain high in the country less than 5 weeks ahead of the presidential election. The Ghanaian diplomat, who met with President Alassane Ouattara and his 3 challengers, electoral officials, and civil society representatives, reiterated the United Nations support for a transparent and credible election. The envoy called on all political actors to respect human rights, no matter the outcome of the results of the election planned for the 31st of October. In neighboring Mali, Interim President Bandao on Sunday named former Foreign Minister Mokhtar Wane as Prime Minister. The move honored the Economic Community of West African States' demand of a civilian-led transition to lift sanctions imposed shortly after the August military coup. Wane's appointment came 2 days after Mali's new interim president's swearing-in ceremony in the capital Bamako.
My gratitude also goes, of course, to ECOWAS for its constant concern for our country and for the wise advice that the mediator, His Excellency Goodluck Jonathan, has continued to lavish on his Malian brothers since June. He is with us now. I welcome his presence, and I would like to assure him of the determination of the Malians to lead a stable, peaceful and successful transition under the agreed conditions and deadlines.
The 70-year-old retired colonel and his new prime minister are to rule Mali for at most 18 months before staging new elections. In neighboring Senegal, the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Senegalese abroad, Amadou Ba, on Saturday addressed the suspension of debt servicing and asked the African Union to maintain debt moratorium until 2021 in an address to the United Nations General Assembly.
I take this opportunity to commend the efforts made by the members of the G20, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund in the context of the initiative for the suspension of debt servicing. I would call on the African Union to continue its effort to attain this moratorium to 2021.
The minister also highlighted the need for a renewed multilateralism and urged a better African representation at the Security Council.
Today, we need a rejuvenated multilateralism. We need a reformed and effective universal organization as collective responses to our existential questions so that no one is left behind. Together, we can address the various challenges that we are facing, such as terrorism and violent extremism, armed conflicts, financing for development, illicit financial flows, migration, poverty and exclusion, public health, and climate change. One may well wonder why Africa is the only continent not to have a permanent seat at the Security Council in the light of all this.
Last week, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa and Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa also called for greater African representation at the United Nations Security Council. In Central Africa, the President of the Central African Republic, Faustin-Archange Touadéra, will be seeking a second term in the presidential election planned for the 27th of December. 63-year-old Touadéra, in office since 2016, on Sunday accepted to be his United Hearts Movement Party's torchbearer in the upcoming vote. The incumbent leader now joins a dozen of candidates, among which former President François Bozizé, toppled in 2013 by rebel coalition Seleka, who came back home after years of exile. In Eastern Africa, Sudan's Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok on Sunday stated that normalizing ties with Israel is a complicated issue that needs a deep national debate. Hamdok's statement comes after the United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo last month visited Khartoum to push a deal. However, the Prime Minister clarified that his government has asked Pompeo to separate the lifting of American sanctions on Sudan and the normalization of ties with Washington's ally, Israel, adding that the latter has many other complications which demand deep consideration and discussion. On the economic front, Rwanda's tour operators have announced that domestic tourism should boost the tourism sector and cushion the negative impact caused by anti-coronavirus measures. President Paul Kagame last week hailed Rwandan families exploring different parts of the country after the Rwanda Development Board, the country's tourism regulator, announced the reopening of activities to domestic tourists. This decision came before the government reopened airports to commercial flights last month after a 5-month suspension due to the coronavirus pandemic. On the security front, the death toll from Friday's jihadist attack on the convoy of Borno State Governor Babagana Umara Zulum in northeast Nigeria rose to 30 over the weekend. Security sources said on Saturday that at least 30 people perished when jihadist rebels linked to the Islamic State group opened fire and rocket-propelled grenades as the convoy was passing through a village near the town of Baga on the shores of Lake Chad. Among the victims were government-backed militia members, policemen and civilians. The governor, whose sources said was unhurt in the attack, had flown to the area to prepare for the return of residents displaced from Baga by the decade-long conflict. The Islamic State West Africa Province Group has recently intensified attacks on military and civilian targets in the region known as a bastion for the jihadists. On the sports scene, South Africa's rugby union vowed to combat racism when matches resumed on Saturday after a 6-month suspension due to the coronavirus pandemic. A series of principles in which the national body rejects discrimination and racism was read and broadcasted on television before the beginning of matches. The credo included the commitment to maintain and continuously improve a working environment that is fair and respectful, and to celebrate diversity and inclusion for a better future for all. Several players also took a knee in support of the Black Lives Matter movement during the warm-up matches between the nation's top rugby teams. That's it for today. Thank you for watching Vox News.